Welcome everyone to this Construction Leadership Council Construction Playbook Townhall meeting. My name is Alistair Eisner, I'm Chief Executive of the Civil Engineering Contractors Association, but really today my only role is to host the meeting. We've got a pretty stellar lineup of speakers to talk about the playbook today. We've got Nick Smallwood, Chief Executive of the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, Gareth Rhys-Williams, Government Chief Commercial Officer, Hannah Vickers, who's Chief Executive at the Association for Consultancy and Engineering, and Mark Reynolds, Chief Executive at MACE. So just some house rules before we get underway. This is a town hall, so it is intended to be a discussion, not just a presentation. So because it's a very large meeting, we've got hundreds of people involved. We're asking if you could use the question and answer facility in terms of joining the meeting. With no further ado, I think that's all of the key points. We will move on because we've got quite a tight schedule. So I will pass across to Nick. And Nick, would you like to lead us off in relation to the playbook?
Thanks, Alistair. So if you'd be so kind as to go to slide 3, let me start by introducing the issue. So hopefully everyone clearly understands that construction is a key UK industry and has a significant impact on our economy and jobs and wider goals such as net zero and levelling up. However, there are a number of pressing concerns, including low productivity growth and a sustained lack of investment over the years into new technologies and skills. And this has a significant impact on government, and public works projects and programmes make a significant proportion of government spending. I think in the next 12 months or so, we're looking at 37 billion of contracts coming to the market. So to meet this ambition, we need to change the way we approach the delivery of public works. The Construction Playbook, published in December 2020, is designed to achieve the Prime Minister's ambition of building back faster, better and greener construction by transforming how we assess, procure and deliver public works projects and programmes. The Construction Playbook forms part of a package of reforms that government is carrying out as part of our commitment to fundamentally change the way we consider and deliver infrastructure across the whole of the UK. And the Playbook was first announced in the National Infrastructure Strategy, which was published in November last year, setting out our long-term infrastructure ambitions, and they truly are ambitious. The Playbook is also a key deliverable of Project Speed, which was established in June last year to deliver the government's public investment projects more strategically and more efficiently for the benefit of both the public sector and industry. You go to the next slide, Alistair. Now, I think the Construction Playbook builds on the success of what was the outsourcing playbook to set out 14 key policy reforms and guidance for how government should deliver public works projects and programmes. These include 8 areas of best practice adapted from the outsourcing playbook, with 6 policy reforms new to the Construction Playbook. So these reforms need to be considered as a package overall. However, I'd like to just highlight 4 key policies which I think make the most significant impact on the sector as a whole. So let me take you through those. Firstly, portfolios and long-term contracting to drive greater value through public spending and give industry the certainty required to invest in new technologies to deliver improved quality, productivity and efficiency. Secondly, harmonising, digitising and rationalising demand to enable standardised design, components and interfaces and drive the adoption of modern methods of construction, including digital and off-site manufacturing technologies. Thirdly, further embedding digital technologies overall, including building information modelling and MMC into improved safety, enable innovation, reduce costs, and supporting more sustainable outcomes. And fourthly, adopting an outcome-based approach aligned with government's strategic priorities and ensuring we drive continuous improvement and innovation. You go to the slide 5, please, Alistair. So I think by adopting the policies and principles in the Construction Playbook, we will increase productivity and improve environmental and economically sustainable situation and create an internationally competitive sector, actually. To achieve this, though, we will need to set clear and appropriate outcome-based specifications, favour long-term contracting across portfolios where appropriate, standardise designs, components, and interfaces as much as possible, drive innovation and the adoption of modern methods of construction, create sustainable, effective, win-win contracting arrangements, and increase the speed of end-to-end project and programme delivery. Achieving these aims will require that we maintain the really good collaborative approach we've taken to develop the playbook for better outcomes for the public and a healthy, more sustainable construction sector. So with that, let me pause, Alistair, and hand back to you.
Fantastic. Now you can't see me probably, but I was in a mild panic mode there because we had a slight problem with our next speaker, Gareth Rhys-Jones, who was due to join us. I think, Gareth, you're with us now. Is that the case?
No, I managed to completely foul up the very simple technical instructions, so apologies for that.
No, I think it was my fault, but you've arrived at the perfect time because Nick has just come to the end of his slot. So can I pass straight across to you?
Yeah, no, look, thanks so much. And look, delighted to be here, everybody. And those of you who sit on both the outsourcing side of the industry and the construction side of the industry will know about the success we've had with the outsourcing playbook. And what we've done here is, again, work with industry to build the construction playbook, which, there are key issues here, aren't there? There's health and safety, there's building safety, there's build back greener, and there's social value, and they're all embedded in here. And the construction playbook is among, frankly, intelligent common sense written down. And those of you, if you haven't read it, you really should have a copy of it under your pillow. It's obvious stuff, but it is in the nature of much obvious common sense. It's not that common. And the object of the exercise, and it's just great to have so many of you on the call today, is to try to, how do we make the common sense actually common, as in pervasive? And we really need your help on that. I know how complicated this industry is. Years ago, I used to run Central Europe for British Gypsum, so I ran what was their Regips organization before they got bought by Saint-Gobain. So I used to sell into distribution, I used to sell into construction. I'm not pretending to be a construction expert, but I have, an understanding of the complexity of the business. And the one thing that is very obvious is that we've written down this best practice in collaboration with the industry. It's going to apply to all public works. We can flip onto the next slide. There we go. It's going to apply to all new public works, and it's a complicated landscape. There are thousands of people buying these things. There are thousands of companies providing them, and the best we can do is a comply or explain basis, as we got on the chart here. We really do need your help. Frankly, to hold us to account. And I said this to the working group who very helpfully helped us build this, and I think it was possibly something of a shock. We do actually need you to constructively sneak on us when we don't follow it. I'm, as Chief Commercial Officer, I'm painfully aware we are not a perfect customer. I know that comes as a shock to many of you, and you'll be sitting there aghast in horror at this, unexpected revelation. But we're not perfect. We are trying to be better. Nick's touched on some aspects of that. And the playbook embodies lots of things we know we should do better. But I would ask for a mixture of forbearance and support. Forbearance, there are thousands of public procurers who are trying to contract with you. This is not an army, a well-disciplined army, and even if it was, it's a very large army, and so there will be people within us who get the message earlier and people who get the message later. We're just embarking on a huge training program and a program of on-the-shoulder support to try to drive compliance with this, but it will not be perfect. So that's the forbearance aspect, but your support is really necessary. Please, if you've got egregious cases where we're just not doing things right in the way we've laid out, please let us know. And these are expectations. We want to know when we're doing badly, and we had what used to be called the mystery shopper service. That's now been called the PPRS service, which is less excitingly named, but it stands for the Public Procurement Review Service. So it does at least do what it says in the tin now, whereas mystery shopper wasn't really a shopper. It was more of a mystery buyer. Please do let us know where we're going wrong. We can then, talk to ourselves and try to improve. And frankly, also learn for subsequent iterations of this playbook. We've already updated the outsourcing playbook, and I doubt, very good though this document is, it will not be perfect. And if we had this call in a year's time, I'm sure we'd all build in other things that we would say, well, that's also a best practice that we've missed, or we haven't explained things properly. So that's the support point. If we just flip to the last slide. I guess the key point in here, within your role, is in that the big green box there. Ensure the principles, flow down your supply chain. We need this just not to work at the prime level, but at every level throughout the chain, or it's not going to work. This is all about standards. This is all about doing things the same way. All about taking cost out. All about improving safety. All about better quality, and that is about repetitively doing the right thing, which is back to the standard. So please do push those points down. We're going to be starting to publish pipelines, which will hopefully guide you to be able to bid for the things that are attractive, and organize yourselves to bid for the things that are attractive. Please let your supply, float those down your supply chain. There's already a requirement for large contracts that are subcontracted to be put on Contracts Finder, so that widens the group of people who are able to bid for your work that you choose to subcontract. So please do take these points into consideration. The last thing I would touch on before handing back is, and it may seem odd as the Chief Commercial Officer in government, whatever the word for 3 up from penultimate is a key point. Bid with a fair margin baked in. Which I know I'm not inviting you to put your prices up. I'm inviting you to bid at a margin that allows you to complete the contract in a way that your shareholders, your owners say, yeah, good job, nicely done, that was worth doing. Government procurement is complicated enough without having vendors going bust halfway through. And that is not a situation we want to be in. And so we are interested in paying a fair margin. We've got increasing numbers of systems to check against low bids and exclude low bids. We want you to make a fair margin and deliver an outstanding product quickly, safely, brilliantly, and come back and do it again. And I'm very conscious that only is true if you make a fair margin. We could argue with a room full of economists for a year what fair margin means, but I think as sort of business people, we've got a sensible understanding of that. It's a competitive margin, but it's a fair margin. So I'll end on that perhaps slightly surprising note, and hand back and look forward to some questions at the end.
Well, I hope for everyone on the call, it's not a surprising note, but a very welcome note in terms of sort of the supply side's desire to deliver an outstanding product for the customer and to be able to earn a fair margin in doing so. Now, one of the beauties of the CLC is it is a partnership between industry and the government. So I'm delighted that we've got a couple of speakers now from the supply side of the industry to talk about what the playbook means for them. So if I can hand across to Hannah now to go through from the ACE perspective what the playbook means to her.
Thank you very much, Alistair. That was a great introduction. That makes me sound like I'm going to sort of declare my undying love to the playbook. But I will start with the congratulations, actually, because it is, I think, a fundamental step forward in terms of the government and industry relationship. So congratulations to Nick and Gareth for getting it over the line. I don't underestimate actually the sort of effort required to do that. So thank you very much. I think, it's a brave thing to put out policies in the public domain that you'll then have to stand behind. So we will do what we can to help you but appreciate you for trying to take a sort of fundamental step forward, which is great to see. I wanted to just build on your point really, Gareth, about the sort of sustainable operating margins. And, Nick, you touched very much on the benefits of the playbook and all the things that it will unlock. Another one to take back to the political overlords, I think, is the opportunity for a sustainable construction sector, sustainable businesses, actually meaning more people in work and employment, which is going to become increasingly important, I think, as we come out of COVID. So, that for us is really important, that we can sustain our workforce. We've done well so far in COVID, and things like the playbook will help us doing that going forward. So I wanted to just use a few minutes now to pick out the edited highlights as far as the consultants are concerned from the playbook. So the 3 policies I think are most fundamental to us, and a little bit of a call to action to all of the consultants around what we actually need to shift and change in response to them. So those 3 policies are early engagement, outcome-based specifications, and the delivery model assessments. So I'll just take them in turn. So firstly, the early engagement. To my mind, this is something which has the opportunity to really unlock a lot of the value that Nick cited. If you take as an example, bringing in technical experts earlier in the project lifecycle, it's far easier to design out embedded carbon, operational carbon, than to be brought in to deliver a design when a client has consulted widely, shall we say, with a lot of political stakeholders on what the solution is. So those sorts of things really have the opportunity to unlock a lot of latent capability in the technical consultants if we really can start with outcome-based specifications. And not least the digital abilities we've now got to be able to optioneer and model, perhaps in a way that doesn't involve pens and drawing boards as we may have done previously, in a more useful and constructive way to the clients. So there's something there, I think, for us to be able to respond as the industry to being engaged earlier in the asset life cycle. The second one's outcome-based specification. Use of the project scorecard to give us a much clearer articulation of what clients actually value, allowing us to align what we're delivering against their values, so bringing together the incentives of the client and the market in the commercial space. For my members specifically, actually being able to identify the right technical partners, select them, and then reward them on the basis of value creation is a fundamental shift to us and our business models. We'll go from being able to provide bodies on projects to actually being able to deliver you really value-adding digital technical solutions. So please don't shy away from implementing that one. Gareth, I don't underestimate the challenge there. Setting commercial strategies on the basis of performance and outcomes in a measurable and transparent way is really difficult, which you will be fully aware, but I think it's the right thing. So, hopefully the benchmarking and the work that the IPA are doing on that with good data will help you. But I think that is the biggest sort of transformation you could deliver in terms of the relationship with the consultancy supply chain. And lastly, the delivery model assessments. I really, again, like this part of the playbook because it makes the conscious decision by the clients to look at what they take responsibility for, what the supply chain takes the responsibility for. And that in itself is a really important decision to recognise. We're in a phase of transformation, not just for the clients, but also for what the market can offer. So actually having that sort of stop, make a conscious decision, I think will allow both sides to really take stock of where they are. And actually that boundary may move one way or another over the course of the next few years as we develop capabilities. We'll see the growing clients coming out of Nick's Project Leadership Academy and MPLA. And actually we'll see the industry developing our capabilities. So I can see that boundary between client and market shifting. So, that sort of take stock, make it a conscious decision will be a really important part of getting the commercial strategy right at that point in time. So again, very much look forward to seeing that in action. And lastly, I'm just going to finish with a call to action. It's too easy for us to default to saying the clients drive everything. And we will just respond in a passive, childlike way to their parental behaviour. I think it's really now for us, particularly as consultants, we have a lot of advisory practices. We have a lot of people that work client side. So it's not just about the clients upskilling and learning. It's actually about ourselves, my members, getting themselves up to speed on how to give decent, up-to-date modern advice that is consistent with taking the construction playbook policies into actual bespoke designs of delivery models and commercial strategies for clients, because that's our role going forward. If we fail in that, we will be actually watering down a lot of the good work and the policies. So there's definitely something there for us to take away, and I think be sort of part of the solution in terms of rolling the construction playbook out in practice. So very much look forward to it. Thank you again for the level of ambition it sets out, and exciting next few years in the construction industry, I'd say.
Fantastic stuff, Hannah. Thank you very much. I'm going to come on to Mark in just a quick second, but before I do that, after Mark, we will move into the town hall session bit of this where we have the option for Q&A. You'll see at the bottom there is a Q&A button. If you've got any questions, please do use that to raise any points. It's not necessarily just questions, it's perhaps, this is a two-way dialogue, so if there's feedback that you want to provide in terms of what it'll mean for your business and how you're looking to implement the playbook, please do let us know as well. But now I'd like to hand across to Mark Reynolds of Mace, who's been another person that's been heavily involved in helping to develop the playbook. So Mark.
Thank you, Alistair. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile just beginning how we, the CLC, got involved. And it was a phone call, I think it was late on a Friday night at the end of June. Remembering we were in a global pandemic in the midst of everything at the time, and for the industry, it was a really difficult period. And I have to congratulate Claire Gibb, Matt Brown, Matt Lloyd, and Phil Brooks, who really did all the heavy lift and coordinating what were weekly calls with about 40 odd people on the calls, quite vocal, not always agreeing. I think it's fair to say that we didn't always agree on some of the things, and there's still some things we don't agree on. However, what it is we've got a fantastic platform for us to build upon. And I think Gareth's point is really important about having a resilient and capable industry. It's imperative on all of us to work together to deliver that. And I think the playbook is a brilliant platform for us to start moving along that journey. A bit like Hannah set out sort of 3 principles as well. I think there's some really important things for the delivery side of the industry to really use the principles of the playbook and the policies. And I have to applaud the IPA, particularly around the commercial pipeline. It's good, it needs to be better, but it's better than it's ever been before. And what we do need to do is build on this whole approach around portfolio long-term projects. What that allows the industry to do is properly plan and invest in the future. And one of the key principles we put in the playbook very early on was the whole drive around standardization, standard components, standard interfaces, driving modern methods of construction. If we're going to create a safer, more sustainable industry, we need to take people off the side. We need to do it in a safer, more efficient way to improve productivity. And let me be clear from someone who runs a business and employs 62,000 people on site a week. You know, it's important that those people are working efficiently and effectively. If they can be more productive, they will actually earn better profits. If they're more productive, they will earn better salaries. If they're more productive, they will lower costs. And this is why it's really important that we get behind that. That's why we need a skilled workforce that we invest in. And we should use places like, you know, through the work that we're doing with Construction Innovation Hub. We really should build on the skills being developed by the Construction Innovation Hub with all of the platform technologies, sub-assemblies, because they will help us drive a more efficient industry. And this is what the playbook's about. Hannah's mentioned about early contractor involvement. We've got to get the designs right up front so that we can drive off-site, pre-assembly, modern methods of construction. And the industry's doing some good work, but I'm not sure we're all aware of how we can tap into that. So it's important that we use the Construction Innovation Hub, the CLC, how we can link in with higher educations to drive work that the Innovate UK are doing. So I think that's the biggest opportunity for us, is to sort of re-engineer the industry to take it forward. And what's really struck me about the playbook is about this win-win contracting arrangements. Now, I think sharing best practice and benchmark data is essential. We need the professional side of the industry, Hannah, your members, to share information at the outset so we can actually work together to beat the price. We need to keep the cost down. It says clearly in the playbook, there is a desire to keep bid costs down. Why we have to keep going through pre-quals time and time again to get on the bid list to then bid for the work is ridiculous. It is a waste of money. Contractors spend over 0.5% of their revenues on bidding. It's ridiculous. So we have to find ways of improving that. And that also, as Gareth said, it isn't just about the major contractors. This has to flow through the supply chain. You know, if the playbook puts principles in place around sharing costs, sharing data, that must flow through the supply chain. We have an obligation as deliverers, tier ones, to make sure we pay all our suppliers on time. And I welcome what the government issued yesterday, this week, in terms of fair payment mechanisms. And I really like the idea of conflict avoidance. There are some bad practices creeping in from suppliers. It's not good enough all the way around to do smash and grab adjudications. We have an obligation to deliver building sites which are safer, workplaces which are safer and healthier. And we have a huge challenge on our hands together to deal with building safety. We have to address the building safety as a result of Grenfell. The playbook gives us a platform to do this by taking a portfolio and program and enterprise approach. And I applaud the initiative around social value and using local communities to help local communities employment to build back better and provide a much more, solve the economic inequalities in our country and to promote equal opportunity working. Great initiatives that need to be carried through. So for this to succeed, we need government and its government agencies all to get behind this and actually embed this in their procurement programs. We as the CLC will hold Gareth, Nick and his team to account if they don't deliver. And we will be personally phoning up the chief execs when they send out contracts that don't align with the playbook. Equally, as deliverers, we need to step up and we need to embrace the principles. Otherwise, there's huge amount of work that's gone in to create this fantastic platform for what is, I think, the best industry you could ever be employed in. We will destroy the opportunities for others who will follow us in the future. So we have the great platform, we have strategic opportunities. We look forward to success. We look forward to challenges along the way, and we look forward to building a much better and more resilient industry. And just to reiterate, I do congratulate the Cabinet Office for driving this through in such a short time. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Mark. So we've reached that town hall section of the agenda, and this is where we get into the Q&A. I've got the pleasure of I can actually see the questions as they're coming on, and it's fair to say there's some easy ones and there's some harder ones. So I'm going to be really cheeky and I'm going to pick up the really easy ones. So the really easy ones are, will the slides be available? And the answer is yes, we will make the slides available. That wasn't too hard. The second one was, will a recording of the session be available? Assuming that I can manage the technology, the answer is yes. We will probably take 24, 48 hours just to edit down any stuff at the start and the end. But yes, the intention is, as with previous webinars, we'll put that on the Construction Leadership Council website. So those were the easy ones. Now, Gareth, I can see you've got a hand up.
Yeah, let me grab some of the medium ones. I'll leave the hard ones to Nick and Hannah and Mark. So there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. I'm just sort of flicking through them. I've answered a couple by typing. I guess a lot of the others go to how we're going to try and roll this out. So there are, resources are finite. We've got, significant resources to roll this out, but that's what I said about forbearance. This will take us a long time to get to everybody, and we're just going to try and pick on the larger projects first and the ones that we think are likely to be most contentious. What we did with the outsourcing playbook, which worked well, is that we said to ourselves, let's try and get around all the major procurers, in that case of outsourcing, but in this case of construction or infrastructure, and make sure we've run a couple of projects with them with what's called on the shoulder support. So we're actually teaching by doing, rather than just say, here's the paperwork, read it and and sort of suck it up from just reading it. And so that on-the-shoulder support, folks have to ask for that. We can't just pitch up and impose ourselves on a council or on a procuring entity. But it's been enormously successful with the outsourcing playbook, and that's meant that there are increasing numbers of teams that have run a couple of projects properly, and then it gets into muscle memory and so on. And we supplement that with obviously just training programs, talking people through the principles of it and how we want people to work. But that is not as effective. That is much more effective than just publishing the thing, which we published. But it's not as effective as the on-the-shoulder support. But on the other hand, the on-the-shoulder support is actually sitting down and working a whole project with people, which obviously takes time. And that's where I think another plea to all of you: please do propagate this, and hold it up as best practice, and push it through your supply chain, so this becomes the de facto way of working. Like a contract structure. No, hang on, this doesn't, hold each other to account. No, this isn't the right way of doing it. And then it becomes, very, very effective indeed. So I hope that talks about a lot of the answers a number of the questions in the chat.
Fantastic. So I'll pick up another question from the chat, and perhaps this one will be one for Nick. UK delivery partners and supply chains endorse and support this model in the direction of travel. What advice do the panel have to help the public sector clients pick up the baton with us? So how do we make sure that this really does, not just within the big clients, but across the public sector? How do we make sure that adoption happens?
So Gareth and I are going to have a BDI on what happens with public sector projects. I have the benefit, of course, in the IPA for the government major project portfolio of scrutinising them as they come through the development funnel. So it's one of the tests that we'll be doing to test compliance, basically. It'll be comply or explain, and I'm sure there will be occasions when not everything can be achieved. But I think it's really important, Alistair, that we just reflect on why we're doing all this. Because I think there are some givens that we really need to get our heads around. A given is that the construction industry was not in a healthy state before we went into this pandemic. The reality is we've got a lot of people now unemployed. We've got the most ambitious national infrastructure strategy in a generation. And I would encourage everyone to read the NIS document, because I think it makes really, really good reading and shows the commitment that we have in the public sector to making this happen. And then we're in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution, whether you like it or not. And I think there's a chance here for us to recognize that we need to up the game in the digital space, become expertise in that space, and recognize that if we want to deliver everything in the NIS, we will not have enough skills in the UK to deliver by the middle of this decade. So it's incumbent on us to find ways to become more productive, smarter, invite people into the industry, make it an attractive place for high-tech graduates and non-graduates to come, to have what could be a fantastic, fulfilling 40-year career. If you look at the ambition of the NIS, we're going to be building the rail infrastructure for the next 40 years. We've got 40 hospitals, we've got schools, we've got prisons, we've got housing. The list goes on. It's a really ambitious agenda with design one, build many opportunities that, it can be open for everyone to look and say, okay, with this framework in the playbook, I get it. I now see a sustainable long-term pipeline that I could be really productive and sign up to invest in skills and technology, because the market is going to be there for me to do the work. I think the other lens we've got, and why would the public sector be interested? Because actually we're no longer bound by the EU legislation or competition law. We need to find our own way forward. And there's a real opportunity for UK PLC to become really efficient in this space, given the infrastructure ambition that we have. So a bit of a long answer, but hopefully you'll get the flavour that this is a serious investment that will require us to adopt these technologies and techniques to allow us to deliver on the ambition.
Thanks, Nick. Well, you had a long answer. I've got now a long question because there's a few questions that have come in relation to modern methods of construction. And so I'm sort of going to package them together and ask the panel for their views. So I've got one around how do we drive innovation and adoption of modern methods of construction without a plan to collaborate with institutions and universities? We've got a question about, why are we focusing on modern methods of construction? Shouldn't we be doing site work better? And do we have any examples of packages of business, such as 5 schools, to enable those modern methods of construction efficiencies? Mark, I might ask you to, because I know you've got a passion about modern methods and skills, I might ask you to answer the question about, how do we make this happen if we don't have a plan to make sure we've got the education in place for that?
Yeah, so let's start with why we're doing this. If we can do this faster, safer, higher quality, and provide an industry which is going to be much more resilient in the future, why wouldn't you? So if we went to a client that said we could reduce the speed to build by 30%, it means any finance costs in the private sector is much lower, and it's going to be safer and it's going to be more economic. Why wouldn't you do it? So I mentioned earlier in the Construction Innovation Hub the work they're doing around platforms, sub-assemblies and components. It's really important that we get our heads around those techniques, because that's how we can go quicker on site. And I will use a really simple example for on-site work. If you're building an apartment block, it takes you 2 days to do the cabling, and you make looms off-site, and you could do it in half a day with half the number of people. Why wouldn't you do it? Because it's safer, cleaner, better. So they're the simple things. There's some really simple things that we can do to make on-site work go quicker. And the reason for that is that when we've got a shortage of people, and Nick has said with the opportunities, this industry potentially will lose 500,000 people in the next 10 years through retirement. There isn't enough people coming to the industry to sustain the 3.2 million people employed in the sector today. So we have to find ways to do things more efficiently going forward in the future. So there's a burning platform one end, and we have to train people with the base skills so they've got the knowledge, but we also train them with the future skills. And I'm involved with the Project Speed Construction Delivery Skills Group, and the government, DFE and the various government departments are really getting behind some important initiatives to support industry to drive it forward. So these things are, it's only started 11 months ago, let's be honest, and for the first 2 months we were in triage. What has moved on in the last 10 months is unbelievable. People talk about what's happened in retail, but we must get behind these initiatives and use the ideas. I love it when people challenge us and say, what about on-site? Because that's exactly what we want to be doing. We want to be challenging on-site, off-site. We want to be challenging the engineers and the architects, and we want to be challenging the clients, because that's the only way we're going to move together. But we must collaborate.
Would anyone else like to say any more about modern methods at all?
Yeah, just to add, Alistair, I think there's a market reality here that, you can off-site fabricate, use modern methods and take cost, schedule and safety risk out of a build. We've seen that already with some of the Pathfinder work that's being done in DFE and recently on Wellingborough Prison. So for those in the supply chain who aren't prepared to adopt the technologies, they're going to be very quickly uncompetitive. So I think there's an issue here that, yes, we need to build back better, greener, faster and save money for the taxpayer. But I think there's also a real need for us to make sure that you have a competitive marketplace and that people can do the best that's possible. And for anyone who thinks that this isn't the way to go, just look on YouTube at how quickly the Chinese can build a multi-story hotel or a hospital. I mean, it's quite amazing. And it's not poor quality because I've been and seen them. So I think we just need to open our eyes to what's happening around us, both in the construction sector in other countries, but also in other industries, and where we can learn and adapt modern methods of working to actually benefit everyone, benefit you as the community doing the building and the designing, and us as the spenders of public money.
Excellent. So we've got a couple of questions that have come in relation to measuring success, i.e. we've published the document, but at the moment it is just a document. How will we know that it's actually landed and had an impact? Nick, I would like to come back to you, but Hannah, from a supply chain perspective, looking at this, what would success look like for the playbook? If you're looking forward a year hence, 2 years hence, what do you think the measurable change will be from your perspective?
So I think there's a very, very clear one for the consultancy sector is I'd like to see us being engaged on the basis of value rather than volume. At the moment, if you're buying consultants, you're buying bodies on a rate card, probably. And if I just I'll use the MMC as an example, but at the moment you'll be buying, from scratch, basic designs for every single school, every single building. It will be start from first principles, put it through the machine because you're buying inputs. I think the opportunity really for us as designers is to move to a more productized but higher value approach. So if we can design one school that fits into an MMC deployment that can then be deployed many times, we can spend more time actually designing a really good school that has high value and delivers high value for things like improved learning outcomes, improved net zero and energy efficiency, because it's worthwhile for us to spend the time and the effort doing that. It's deployed many times, we can learn from it in use because actually we're taking that learning back into the next deployment, but that does require a fundamental shift. So in a year's time I would like to see us have very different commercial relationships that actually encourage us to be engaged in that way and then be rewarded for it. So if you design a school that is brilliant and can be deployed right across DfE's estate, that is net zero, that is fantastic in terms of supporting learning outcomes and better value for those people who actually use the school, I'd like to see those suppliers having the sort of best return on investment, really sort of steaming ahead in terms of the market. That's the shift. If we can start to do that very quickly, as Nick sort of alluded to, we'll see a split in the market. We'll see those suppliers that are committed to that and can turn their capability and their investment and their business model to value creation, and those that are perhaps stuck on a sort of volume, churning out the same thing, not making much progress in terms of industry transformation. So that's what I'd like to see, is fewer rate cards and more value and that recognition and reward for it.
So Nick and Gareth, you've got your name on the document, so measuring the success of it will be important to you. What would success look like to you?
Nick, and perhaps I could weave in the answers to some of the other things in the chat too. So, what do we see that annoys all of us? Projects running late, projects running over cost, projects stopped, because we haven't done the ground surveys first, so everything has to stop, while we finish off, totally valid archaeological studies or moving utilities, or some of you involved will know the two screamer projects that I'm talking about, but we repetitively make this mistake. And so, big sign of success will be project, the percentage of projects that finish on time, finish on cost. That's what we're looking for as a public sector buyer. We want the thing to show up, broadly, and Nick would be more precise than that, when we want, executed safely and so on. So I think those are for me are the key metrics. But the problem that and a lot of the questions in the comments talk about this is, how do we get cash-strapped procurers around the country to do it? They may well understand that it's worth doing. I've used the example of ground surveys as an example. They may well understand that actually it's better to understand what you're actually contracting for than find out halfway through. But their finance director, the evil ogre with a checkbook, is crushing down on them. And partly the purpose of this playbook is to give permission to people who know better, but perhaps don't actually hold the checkbook, to say, no, hang on, we will get the project, whatever the project is, delivered more on time, more to cost, if we follow these these precepts. And so, I'm sure Nick will be measuring the the larger projects. I have a controls system where large public procurement has to come through my controls team. And one of the things we will be checking, and we already do check on the outsourcing playbook, has this contract been let following the precepts in the playbook? If not, go back and do it properly. But that's an unpleasant message. No one likes giving that. But that's the way we can enforce it internally. But I think that back to the point I made about everyone being involved. Here's a piece of best practice. Comply or explain. Why would you not be following it to get the results that we talked about? Can I just touch on a couple of other quick things? There was a question about the NHSE. Yep, there's just appointed a new construction buyer to help with the 40 hospital program, who is totally up to speed on that. So all of the central government buyers work for me functionally. So hopefully we got a little bit of grip on that. But I think the NHS is totally understanding this and wanting what we want to achieve. There's a lot of questions on net zero and why is there not more in the playbook about net zero. So let me just explain that. That is in no sense a running away from net zero. You will discover, and Mark was kind enough to mention the work we've done on prompt payment, and how we've I think helped people drive up better prompt payment performance. There, I hope, will be a very similar measure coming on compliance to net zero. Does everyone have a net zero plan? Get to net zero by 2050? Are they following it? And what might happen if they don't follow it? That sort of mirrors the prompt payment code and the prompt payment policy. I haven't quite swung that yet, but hope to. So I think there's other measures that we'll talk about net zero, but also this is about how do we contract. It's not this. The playbook is not trying to set the outcomes we want to contract for. I think it would be astonishing if any public procurement entity does not include a net zero requirement in their procurement. But that's, that is for them, and sort of watch this space on what's going to be called the National Procurement Policy Statement that will be coming out hopefully in the next month or two. Anyway, hopefully that wrapped up a few questions altogether. Nick.
Yeah, maybe I can add on how will we measure things. So clearly we're going to have a project scorecard, and as we speak, the IPA is building a benchmarking hub because we really need to have an understanding of what things should cost to build and what has been achieved, and a pipeline of measures to show how we're improving time and again. Because if you design one and build many, the fourth one you build should be lower cost than the first one. And we want to not have a race to the bottom to lowest cost. We want to get better value. So it's really important that we understand what it's costing. And if we can build schools quicker and for less money, we can get better value for not only the taxpayer, but as Hannah said, if we're building better schools that impact the education system in a smarter way, that's good value as well. So hopefully you noticed, if you sleep with a green book under your pillow at night, that the public value framework has been published at the end of last year to go along with all this, where if we want to level up the UK, we're not just going to focus on cost. We need to get an improvement in the cost base for sure. We need to get an improvement in the time it takes to deliver, but there's going to be equally a good focus on public value. So I'd encourage you to keep that lens as well. And it will include things like net zero. And just to be clear on how we check and measure performance, I've got a dashboard already in the IPA that's starting to look at, by department, how their projects on the government major project portfolio are delivering on the promise, cost, schedule and benefits. And we'll be drilling down to understand where those projects that don't deliver, what are the reasons why. So we're going to get more and more focused, I think, in this government on delivering promises and really stepping up. So again, to have such an ambitious agenda as the National Infrastructure Strategy, to continue to do things the way we've always done them is not going to get us there. We really do need to change and embrace what's possible with the digital revolution. And I don't think anyone's even mentioned 5G yet, but 5 years from now, we're going to have a 5G infrastructure across the United Kingdom. Is everyone clear how they're going to exploit that in construction? Because it becomes the Internet of Things. It enables things you can only dream of. So I did really encourage you to look at what's going to be possible in that world, because it's not far away, and you don't want to get there and find you're very late to the party and your competitors are already cranked up and ready to go.
Now we've got 8 minutes left, and we have got some extraordinarily good quality questions coming in. My commitment to you is if we don't get a chance to answer your question today, we will come back to you after this meeting with a response from one of the members of the panel. But I'm going to try and pick up some of the key points that are still there. One, which I think we see quite regularly, is the vast majority of people who work in this industry work for small and medium-sized businesses, and yet is this actually just a document for big business and big clients, your Highways England? If not, how have you engaged SME in the process of developing this, and how will they be involved in that work going forward? I don't know, does anyone particularly want to pick that one up?
Let me grab that. No, it's absolutely not just intended for the primes, but on the other hand, the reality is things trickle down. So, publishing longer term pipelines, we think will give all sectors of the industry a better chance at setting themselves up to compete successfully and then deliver projects. So and there's a lot of comments about risk in here, which perhaps we'll come back to, Alistair, if you want to bundle them up. That is particularly an issue, for the SME cadre, and we're very clear. We're trying to get risk, as I think Chris puts in his comment, putting risk to the party best managed it. And we've got ideas on that in the playbook as well. So this is absolutely not just about the large companies at the top of the tree.
Does anyone else want to pick up anything around SMEs from a sort of supply side? Hannah, I don't know whether obviously a large number of your members will be SMEs.
Yeah, the majority of mine are SMEs, so like 96%, I think, or so. So I think this is a positive. As you say, there is a sort of an element of making sure it cascades down where they are in the extended supply chain. But I do think we could start to see the reality of the supply chains being disrupted. Some of the specialists that we have that are SMEs have the greatest value to add. So if you're going for things like outcome-based specifications, you want the experts closer to the clients to be able to really shape those, what's being delivered and understand and articulate the risks. So to my mind, when we start to see the clients shift, there will be changes to the tiers, and I see more of the SMEs, particularly the SME designers who've got very deep capability, to start to kind of move their way up the supply chain, because they become more valuable, because they become more influential when you look at value rather than just cascading volume of work down the supply chain. So I think there will be shifts, and I would like to see that as something we sort of keep track on in terms of the SME engagement with government. I know there are targets about that, but this should fuel greater SME engagement.
Alistair, I mean, again, sort of the work we did in preparation of the playbook, there was a lot of discussion around SMEs, engaging with SMEs, the type of SMEs who are already involved in the procurement, the procurement and delivery of projects. But importantly, the social value framework is a good guideline for us to work with and use. And it's about when the enterprise is set up, or the program set up, or project, it's about the teams at the beginning saying, this is important, this is how we can deliver this. And it's that collaboration which is going to be beneficial at the outset, so that we, as spoken about, it's an outcome-based procurement. If one of the outcomes is we want to have X millions procured through an SME or in the local community, then you can put those targets in that procurement and in that delivery of the project. This is how projects like the Olympics were delivered. We set down targets to say, we are going to mandate direct employment. We are going to use supply chain from across the country, and we measured ourselves, and we had to report back. We held ourselves to account. That's what these programs and portfolios are all about, working together to do that. So when we talk about DFE or NHS, these are programs where the teams should sit down together and say, these are goals that we collectively want to strive to deliver. And it isn't just about the procurers. If the procurers aren't doing it, then we should hold them to account. If the clients and the SROs aren't doing it, we will have a robust conversation with them. And if they're not listening, we'll get to Gareth and Nick and have a robust conversation with them.
Well, I tell you what, guys, we're coming towards the end of our slot. So I would like to thank you for your time, but just to sort of cap things off, I'd like you to just sort of no more than one sentence. What would you like everyone who's attending this webinar to go away and do as a result of this webinar? What's the action point for everyone who's on this webinar? So Gareth, do you want to go first?
Oh, that's easy. It's like one of those annoying chain letters that eventually promised you'd get £1 million back. And please email a link to the playbook to 1,000 of your SMEs and customers.
Nick?
Very similar. I'd really truly encourage you to read the National Infrastructure Strategy on gov.uk and all that goes within it in terms of ambition and intent, and then read the playbook and try and meet the intent behind it.
Hannah?
So mine would be some self-reflection. Go away and look at your business and think about where it adds value to the client, because I think that's going to become increasingly important to understand that.
And Mark?
Embrace the principles and make sure the procurers and the clients keep to them.
Fantastic. Well, just as you've said what you'd like people to do, I'll just say what I'm going to go away and do. As part of this, the Construction Leadership Council is this partnership between industry and government, and we have said that we will help to support industry understand the playbook. So I think what we will take away, and that'll be Mark and Hannah as well, is how can we go and help you as businesses, wherever you are in the industry, whether you're client side, whether you're supply side, to adopt the playbook. So I suppose my request for you is to be challenging of us, to ask us and make sure that we do deliver on that promise, because I personally think the playbook is probably the most important document for our industry in the last 20 years, if we make it work. But we've got to make it work. So with that, all I'd like to do is thank all of our speakers today, thank all of our delegates. It's always good to see that most actually did stay till the end, which is always a sign that it's interesting content. But yeah, that's been a brilliant session. We will send out a copy of the slides once we've cleared them, a copy of the video, and any answers to questions that hadn't been answered on the day subsequently. Hopefully that will come out to you early next week. But thanks again to our panelists. I would give you a round of applause, but Zoom doesn't really lend itself to such things, but you'll just have to accept it's a digital round of applause. And yeah, thanks to everyone for taking part.